I'm so happy to be here. I have a little moment of levity for you. Maybe we can get a laugh out of this. My daughter Becky wrote a song called Side of the Lord. Since we can't sing, I'm just going to say the words. It goes, "Oh, I must be on the side of the Lord, but I don't know if I'm inside or I'm outside. Oh, I must be on the side of the Lord, but I don't know if I'm to the left or to the right. Oh, I thought my mother was the Lord. Oh, but how can that be when the Lord is a man? Oh, I must be on the side of the Lord, but it seems like all the sides are changing. Oh, I must be on the side of the Lord, but it seems like all the sides are rearranging." Ain't it the truth? So it's good that we can laugh. Now, this sermon today was planned a long time ago. Is there really such a thing as the evolution of consciousness? It's kind of an abstraction, not very juicy and heartfelt for our first time back together. But I find it is the core issue of the unity movement, current history, and our very lives. Because we are in the midst of conscious evolution and making a quantum leap forward. And that's that paradigm shift. We are finding a new context for living, for faith, for spirituality, for society, everything. And what is the evidence of this? Okay. The evidence we find in, number one, the children that are being born are a quantum leap beyond what we've ever seen before. That's what the book, the Indigo Children, is about. But the Indigo Children have come, and now they're in their 40s, we think, and now there is a new breed, the Crystal Children, who are also advanced spiritually. It's like putting them in our old models of education, and all of our institutions don't fit them. They're way beyond that. They're more global, they're more idealistic, they're less materialistic, and they're more concerned about the planet and the greater good. So that's a very big evidence. Another evidence is the different minds that are emerging as having the vision and clarity that we need to base our decisions. And one of those who inspires me is Rupert Sheldrake, who is a scientist in England. He has wonderful videos on YouTube, and he has a book called The Science Delusion, in which he explodes the conventional scientific worldview of materialism and shows there's one of the, I mean, I can't articulate his thoughts yet, but I can share this one ironic story that he tells, or point that he makes, that it is taught in physics that there are certain constants, like the speed of light. And so he researched that to verify it and found that it had varied over a 20-year period from 1940 to 1960. And he went to a leading physicist and said, the speed of light is a constant, but I noticed that it had varied by a significant amount in this 20-year period. And the physicist told him, well, egads, you found one of our big embarrassing mistakes, our big one, embarrassing, inexplainable variances, but we have fixed that. And now we gauge our equations by whatever the speed of light is, so that there can be no mistake. So it's no longer a constant, but it's a deep, dark secret. So I invite you to explore these ideas that Rupert Sheldrake does, because he gives 10 assumptions that the scientific method is based on that don't hold up under close scrutiny. And that helps us to think outside of the known boundaries of our knowledge. Another indication of this consciousness evolution and forward movement is the old standard book called Cosmic Consciousness by William Morris Buck, which was published around 1900, in which he gives evidences, and this was a main staple of the work of unity in the beginning. Charles Fillmore was always talking about William Morris Buck's Cosmic Consciousness. We have a copy of it in our lending library. But anyway, he says, Buck was a psychologist in Canada, and he said that more and more people were having the experience of cosmic consciousness, this great awakening, and the evidence of it, of a person having had it, is that they have elevated moral character, a radiant countenance, they do not fear death, and more and more people, he says, as the consciousness of human beings evolves, more and more people are having this insight, this experience, what we call, the divine revelation, what we call the awakening, what Jesus called being born again. Yes, more and more people are having that, and it's becoming the prized experience that makes life fall into place, that energizes everything that you then do, that makes you immune to illness and suffering. Okay, then there is, I just want to mention Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, because his work, he was a Catholic priest and an anthropologist. His work called The Phenomenon of Man predicts that as human consciousness evolves, there will become a collective consciousness that envelops the whole earth, that will then give rise to more and more complex life forms that are cooperative and enlightened, inspired by divine awareness. So now, I spent the entire last week, from Monday through Friday, interviewing ministerial students at Unity School who are going to Unity School. I was in the office. We did it over the internet, a virtual, what's called L&O, licensing and ordination interviews. I want to tell you, these candidates were extraordinary people, so skilled, so dedicated, articulate, highly aware of the unique and precious quality of the Unity teachings. It was just delightful. Story I had forgotten about, the story of Balaam. Anybody know who that is? Who had a donkey that talked. You know the story? If Alan Wegener were here, he would know it. He knows every single thing in the Bible, Mr. Wegener. Well, it's in the book of Numbers. And the book of Numbers is not called Numbers in Hebrew. It's called the Sacred Journey of the Hebrew people. And in the book of Numbers, there's 3 sections where the Hebrews, the children of Israel, were conquering their way into the Holy Land, and they had gotten to Moab. And the king of Moab, was really afraid that his whole country would be wiped out by them. So he asked one of his prophets to go and curse the Hebrew people. And the prophet was named Balaam, B-A-L-A-A-M. And so Balaam asked the Lord, even though he was a Moab, the text describes him as talking to the Lord. And the Lord said, I can't give you the words to bless the Hebrew people, to curse the Hebrew people, because they're already blessed by me, and there's nothing you can do to change that. But then the king of Moab was pressing Balaam to come and see him so they could talk about this. And so Balaam was riding a donkey to go see the king of Moab, and the donkey saw an angel in the way and wouldn't walk. And so Balaam was beating the donkey. This happened in 3 different ways. First, the donkey saw the angel in the road. Then he saw him in a little crevice where he was trying to redirect him. And then he saw him in another spot where he's trying to redirect him. And each time, the donkey just refused, as donkeys will. And Balaam is beating the donkey. And finally, the donkey speaks and says, Haven't I always been a faithful, servant to you? Why are you hitting me like that? And Balaam says, because you won't walk. And he says, well, there's an angel in the way. And then Balaam sees the angel, which he couldn't see before. The metaphysical interpretation was that Balaam represents, as he was, a holy man. It represents our higher consciousness, which sometimes condemns our physical body for what it won't do. But our physical body sometimes recognizes more divine influences than our higher self does. And that's very characteristic of Bible texts. There are different levels of understanding God throughout the Bible, and that's why they conflict each other. The Bible contradicts itself. And we in Unity now teach that there are sections of the Bible that are written from different standpoints of understanding as human consciousness evolved in its relationship and understanding with the divine. So they're not contradicting, actually. They're just progressing in an evolution of understanding. And even at the very beginning levels of understanding where God does seem anthropomorphic, it still rings true. It still rings true that our relationship with the divine is one-on-one. Now, in our evolution and our relationship with God, we go through phases, yes. And I really want to walk down among you, but I can't. So I've got to stay up here. All right. There's sometimes people have turned away from Unity because of different policies, different experiences, whatever. Some people think we started too soon. Some people are not willing to wear a mask, not to come until they can not wear a mask. Whatever is a person's discernment, whatever they have to do, is their choice and their blessed path. But I just want to share that there have been times in my life when I've turned away from Unity, when I felt justified in saying, okay, that's it. The one time was when I had applied to ministerial school, and they said, well, we only have 50 slots, and we've picked 50, and you came in 51. And if anybody turns us down, we'll contact you, and you will be accepted. Okay. So so go ahead and apply next year. So I applied the next year, and they said, and the year before that was the first year after I got divorced from my husband. So I applied the next year, went through all the interviews, went out there and all that, and they said, we're not accepting you to the program because we feel that it's too soon since your divorce for you to be making a change like this. Yeah. But last year, it was even sooner, and you said I'd be the next one. So can you blame me that I kind of took my paper dolls and left? But it was a really important experience for me, because you know what I found out? I can't find anything better out there than this. I can't live without this. This sacred teaching of Jesus Christ's message, unfettered, undiluted, unadorned, untwisted, just pure and simple, directly conferring and empowering every person to have that experience with God and with Jesus Christ on their own. It's so beautiful, it's so simple, it's pure, and I don't find it anywhere else, and I can't live without it. So here I am. Thank you. And I'll tell you, that was in 1980. I didn't finally get into ministerial school until 2003. I applied more times over my life than anybody in the history of the movement. 8. But it wasn't persistence. It wasn't like every time it didn't work out, I said, well, I'm just going to keep trying. I just said, okay, well, I'll just go another way. So I'd go do something else, and I would do it until it got used up, and then I go, okay, now what I'm going to do? Well, I still want to be a minister. I still want to be in unity. I still want to do this spiritual work. So I'd come back. And each time I had to go another way, I learned a great deal, you see. So that's how divine order unfolds. So when I finally got into ministerial school, they were having this wonderful program, and it was the next to the last year that they actually had a resident program where you pull up stakes and go live there and go to class every day with the same people. Now it's all done from where you live, you know, from your location, and they have you come in for 1 week every so often and examine you and interview you, and then you go back home. Well, actually, that's much more practical. And the unity movement is thriving and benefiting from that, because to expect people to pull up stakes of their whole life, sell their house, live in Kansas City for 2 years, and then pull up stakes again and go find a church to take, it's very disruptive. But that's the path that I was still part of, the old school model. And when I was there, I discovered that the theme of ministerial education was this consciousness evolution, but it was so new that it was unspoken. I was talking to a friend of mine who was in the unity movement his whole life, and I said, well, you know, it seems like the theme of the whole education is consciousness evolution. He said, that's great. However, it wasn't announced, it wasn't published anywhere. But that was the theme. All of the classes and all of the special guests they had were talking about this forward, shifting, unfolding, changing idea of what consciousness is. And what it got around to, now this is, I think, one of the most interesting questions we have in metaphysics today. You know, God is divine mind, or consciousness, the consciousness that abides throughout all that is, and that's evolving. And yet we start with the premise that God is eternal, unchanging principle. So is God evolving, or is God unchanging? It's a question, and we don't have to answer it. But I think it's really interesting to ponder. Don't you? Is God evolving, or is God unchanging? Usually the answer to questions like that is yes, both. Yeah. So we are at a great leap forward with conscious evolution. And the question is, what can deter us? When we fall for a story, when we take the bait, when we take exception to anything, say, oh, but that's not right, I'm not going to, no. Like when I said, well, that's it, I'm done, I'm out of here. What deters us from our evolution, from our forward progress, is to take exception, to let any drama in circumstances draw you into adversariality. Do you hear me? And so I've been seeing that more and more, how there's the bait, the trick, the temptation keeps getting more and more convincing. Oh, but this is really a good cause to get riled up about. Oh, but this is really the time for me to get down and make my stand and resist the evil. This is it. I mean, this is the moment. And I'm telling you, be very vigilant of yourself to not get drawn into adversariality. And this has caused me to be kind of spunky lately, and to keep the consciousness of the greater good, of being one humanity, of being centered in peace and non-resistance. So one thing that happened was that I wrote a blog for the Unity Great Lakes region. I was asked to write the blog, And you can go online and search Great Lakes Unity Region, June blog, and it's by me. And I put it in your program folder here so you could see it, because I would call it pretty spunky. Because you could say, Diane, you're telling people not to use birth control. No, I'm telling people that a spiritual approach to birth control is becoming, is to teach reproductive responsibility, which Aboriginal midwives have known for centuries. Would you agree with that? So I just want to share with you the last paragraph of this blog that asks the question, what does the future hold? Does the solution to being able to survive the dangers of pollution, climate change, and poverty lie in spirituality? Indeed, spirituality, being the realization of oneness, is the great hope of humanity. As each person becomes more sensitized, more aware, more committed to the whole, more connected, to the whole, our choices cease to be destructive, selfish, and short-sighted. Spirituality must become a priority, a new frontier, a buzzword, and the most highly prized experiential process for everyone. It has no carbon footprint. It's freely available to all. It is truly our destiny. Know this and be blessed by it. Well, we have a beautiful statement for meditation today. I am poised and centered in the Christ mind, and nothing can disturb the calm peace of my soul. That is a principle, an idea that is eternal, powerful, and so important. So as we close our minds, our thoughts, as we open our hearts, as we relax our bodies, breathing deeply of the breath of God, the breath of life, we connect with higher consciousness. We connect with the seamless garment of Christ at every level, being filled with light, being filled with harmony and peace, being filled with resolve and wisdom, guidance, illumination. And so let these words just be your words. I am poised and centered in the Christ mind, and nothing can disturb the calm peace of my soul. Saying that in our hearts. Giving thanks for the beauty of poise, the clarity of centeredness, the divinity of Christ, Christ in us, our hope of glory. As we realize this now in the silence. The dream of heaven on earth is alive and manifesting now, breath by breath, moment by moment. And so it is. Amen.